All right, everybody, Ellis Cannon, welcome back to PittsburghSportsReport.com and EllisCannon.com, live streaming video from the NFL Media Center in downtown Dallas at the Dallas Sheraton. We've been providing you coverage all day long. Literally, this is the longest show of my life, Chris Nowinski, but it is continuing. Chris is the president and co-founder of the Sports Legacy Institute, and we're very thrilled to have him on because he's got some information that I think is thrilling in some respects. And, of course, it's information regarding head trauma, brain trauma, concussions, and more. Chris joined me back in the day on the radio end, but there have been some developments here recently that he'll be talking to us about. First of all, great to be with you again, Chris. Thanks for taking a few minutes.
Well, it's great to be talking to you again as well.
Well, and I will tell you, you're talking through our audience, of course, online and our websites, but also we are presented by the Pennsylvania Cyber Charter School. It is the preeminent cyber school in the country, 10,000 students in Pennsylvania.
That's great.
And I have an academy there in sports media and broadcasting. So our audience is varied. It includes young people, and I think it's a great opportunity for you to communicate with them as well and talk about this because this is increasingly part of their world, the new world, and very important indeed. Tell us the latest news.
Well, we're here at Sports Legacy Institute in town this week, really spreading the educational message that's finally being talked about, that concussions are a serious brain injury, and that we need to change how we handle them in sports to protect athletes so they can have nice, long careers. And so we're doing a big concussion clinic tomorrow morning at University of Texas at Arlington. I'm here recruiting brain donors for our research program at the Boston University School of Medicine. People may have heard that we are studying the brains of athletes after they pass away to see what brain trauma does. We announced yesterday that we actually got our 61st brain in the brain bank over the last 3 years, which is a surprisingly high number. Over 20 NFL players that have passed away, their families have donated their brains. And so what we're finding is that a ton of athletes have a disease called chronic traumatic encephalopathy, a degenerative brain disease from too many hits to the head when they were athletes. Of the 13 NFL players that we've completed studies on, 12 of them have had the disease. You know, no one should have this disease in real life, so it's a preventable disease that causes dementia that people are getting voluntarily because they aren't taking care of themselves when they're athletes. And so, and the other issue is you've got a young audience. We're finding it in younger and younger athletes. An 18-year-old, the captain of the Penn football team last year committed suicide, had it at 21. So it's something that we need to take very good care of as young athletes.
Well, let's talk about the fact that you're here collecting brains. And I know that gets a laugh, and I was about to ask you, well, what's it like to go ask somebody for their brain? That's the punchline, but the reality is it's for great reason and purpose, and yet it does take a commitment, even though someone's going to be gone, to say, hey, I want to be part of it. Talk a little bit about how that presentation goes, how that conversation goes.
Well, the conversation is getting easier now because with all the media coverage on us, whether it's HBO Real Sports or 60 Minutes or New York Times, they know what we're doing and what we've been able to accomplish so far in changing sports to make them safer. But the idea is, have you heard about the concussion issue? You know that we can't diagnose this disease in living people yet, and we can't treat it, so there's really no hope once you've hit your head too much. To get there, we need athletes participating, and they get that. And so what we ask them to do is join a longitudinal registry where they take a phone call a year and then they donate their brain when they pass away. And within that resume, we'll be doing a lot of studies, various smaller studies on different groups, so we can develop a diagnostic for this disease. And once we have a diagnostic while you're alive, then we can work on treatment. So they get that we're in a bad place, and to get out of it, we all need to work together.
Now, if anybody's got a question, they could do it by chat with PA Cyber, for that matter, through Ustream at Pittsburgh Sports Report, and Jeff will pass that on to me if we have any questions or anything for Chris. We definitely want to pass it on. Chris, when your PR man came by yesterday or the night before, I jumped at it for the reasons we talked about on and off the air. Now, as it relates to the developments the last couple of days, some of the announcements and so forth, talk about what that means, not even so much from an athletic standpoint, but basically for everybody to know that the concussions out there and diagnosing them and being able to do it more readily impacts, again, not just the athlete, but really anybody. This is expansive, and it obviously applies to a lot of people.
Right, you can get a concussion doing virtually anything. I mean, I got one, I think a small one the other day, slipping on ice back up in Boston. What we're learning is that there's a window of vulnerability after you get a concussion where your brain is injured. It's almost like if you break your ankle, you put it in a cast, you don't keep running around on it because you'll make it a heck of a lot worse. It's the same idea with the brain, that once you injure it, you need to let it rest and recover, or else you will make the injury far worse. And so what's interesting is, in the state of Pennsylvania, for example, there's legislation that's about to be passed to mandate concussion education and then no return to play until you see a doctor, which is a new concept. And so that's been spreading the country. Pennsylvania would be the 12th state if it passes it soon. And also the city of Chicago did, and we're actually here in Dallas. We convinced the city council here to try to pass the same law they passed in Chicago, because Texas doesn't have a very comprehensive law yet, and kids are exposed because of it.
Chris, I have to say that as I'm listening to you, particularly when you talked about the encephalopathy, that I host a show back in Pittsburgh, and I'd love to at some point have you on it by way of phone. It's a general show on every major topic you could find. We've had experts come in to talk about this. We've seen this discussion with Chris Henry. Mm-hmm. We've seen it, which of course was disastrous by definition, but also it opened the door to a guy who we didn't know had a concussion. There was just the fact that he was out there playing could have led to this, which obviously is a red flag. We've also seen, I have other people cheering. They must have liked that line. Yeah. We also, though, know that we've seen a lot of this with Penn State, West Virginia. I want to say a gentleman by the name of Bales back there that does obviously your group. This makes it particularly important because these young people in particular, this is all they're going to know. They're not going to know about back in the day it was a badge of honor to just keep playing. They're going to have a new world, and I think a better world.
Yeah, changing the culture is the major issue here. You and I and everybody older than me, and even 10 years younger, grew up in a world where if you were knocked out, as long as you woke up, you were fine, and you would push yourself through it to your own detriment. And so it's exciting now to have professional athletes who are educated talking about this and saying, it's no longer a badge of honor to play through a concussion. And the other aspect that you alluded to, although Chris Henry did have concussions in high school, the researchers just didn't bother telling anyone. The other players, Owen Thomas, Tom McHale, some other CTE cases did not have any diagnosed concussions throughout their entire lives. And so we're learning that actually the little hits to your head that don't cause symptoms still can be damaging, and the idea that maybe it's not a good idea to whack a 7-year-old in the head 1,000 times a year.
Yeah. Hey, Chris, I enjoyed the conversation. What do you think about the game, by the way?
I've stopped paying attention to the games so much anymore. Yeah. I'm just looking to see that everyone walks away with their head intact.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Chris, we enjoy the opportunity. Congratulations on the great work. Keep it going. We'll talk with you down the road. All right? All right. Thanks so much.